All right, we will go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone. This is Megan Gieseker from ALA's Public Programs Office. I'm pleased to introduce today's webinar, Building Community Partnerships and Inclusive Opportunities, ALA's 2023 Peggy Barber Tribute Grant winners. Next slide, please. Before we start, I'd like to make a few quick announcements. Today's webinar is a presentation of ALA's Public Programs Office with support from ALA's Cultural Communities Fund and the Peggy Barber Tribute Grant. The Peggy Barber Tribute Grant is an annual grant of the American Library Association that recognizes, promotes, and supports meaningful programs in libraries that have limited and/or no access to budgetary support for programming. This grant helps to ease library budget challenges by awarding 3 libraries $2,500 to support a proposed program, program series, or programming effort. After Margaret Peggy Barber passed away in September of 2019, Barber's friends and colleagues created the Peggy Barber Tribute Fund within ALA's Cultural Communities Fund, which recognizes and funds outstanding cultural programming in libraries. These generous supporters have made this annual grant possible. Hopefully, many of you are familiar with Programming Librarian, a website of ALA's Public Programs Office. We have a lot of program ideas and an online learning library full of free webinars like this one. Next slide, please. A couple of notes about our virtual classroom. Only the presenters have microphone access. Live captions can be enabled by clicking on Show Captions. Please use the Q&A feature to ask questions of the presenters or ALA staff. Please use this if you are experiencing any technical issues as well. And please also use the chat feature to engage with your peers. Now I'd like to turn things over to Alicia Deal to share some remarks. Next slide.
Welcome, everyone. My name is Alicia Dill, and I was last year's chair of the Peggy Barber Tribute Grant Committee. I'm proud to introduce today's webinar with the Gill Memorial Library and Mount Kisco Public Library, 2 of the 3 winners of the 2023 Peggy Barber Tribute Grant. Grant recipients were chosen for their strong alignment with the grant's objectives, which focused on initiatives that expanded access for underserved library users. The selection committee was confident that these programs would successfully enhance access for their target communities while fostering greater engagement from new library users. Next slide, please. Now I'd like to introduce our speakers for this afternoon. Martha Iwan earned a master's in special libraries at the University of Toronto. After working in business libraries for several years, Martha gravitated to the public library system and earned a librarian 2 position at the Mount Kisco Public Library. She has worked for MTK since 2001 in a variety of positions, including interim director. In a small suburban library, one gets experience working on a variety of projects, programming being a large part of a daily routine. Next, we have Susan Parenteau, who is Assistant Director at Gill Memorial Library. She has worked at the library for 9 years and has taken on many different responsibilities, including assisting with daily operations, planning children's programming, and acting as interim director. Working with the students in the life skills classes that they were able to offer through the Peggy Barber Tribute Grant has been a highlight. Also from Gill Memorial Library is Jasmine Iana Cohn, who started as a file clerk with an automotive dealership and transitioned to working at her town library during the end of the COVID-19 pandemic. She has now worked at Gill Memorial for over 3 years and has taken on a range of responsibilities, including cataloging and program initiative responsibilities. When not assisting her coworkers at the circulation desk, Jasmine helped Susan, the assistant director, handle the library's additional responsibilities. And with that, I'd like to turn things over to our presenters. Next slide, please.
Hi, thanks so much for the introduction. My name is Martha Iwan, and I'd like to to present to you today the Mount Kisco Library's Peggy Barber Grant Program for 2023, named Open Horizons. Next slide, please. The Mount Kisco Public Library is part of the Mount Kisco Village, which serves a population of approximately 11,000 people. We are located in Westchester County, New York, about 43 miles north of New York City. Next slide, please. According to the 2020 census of the 11,000 people living in the village of Mount Kisco, 3% self-report as having independent living difficulty. Independent living difficulty because of a physical, mental, or emotional problem. Otherwise, approximately 360 people have difficulty performing errands alone. This number of individuals requiring some kind of assistance gives our library the opportunity to highlight our services and provide supportive programming. Being awarded $2,500 through the Peggy Barber Grant allowed our library to address the needs of the adult disabled population in our community. Next slide, please. Our presentation will touch on the following 5 points to explain how our library made Open Horizons a reality at the Mount Kisco Public Library. Who were our community partners? How we planned and put together the program framework. What were the steps in developing Open Horizons? The goals we aimed for, and finally, some of the lessons we learned during the programming year. At the end, I will leave you with some useful resources. Our library was always visited by local organizations with people who did not own library cards. Sometimes the visitors were accompanied by caregivers, but aside from sitting on adult computers, for the most part, they were not engaged in any activity. This prompted me to look at how we as a library could address this situation. I heard that the Westchester Library System, of which Mount Kisco is a part of, was giving workshops focused on creating programming for the adult, intellectually and physically disabled population. Once I had some program ideas, I reached out to Westchester ARC to set up an educational read aloud program. Next slide, please. Westchester ARC is the largest agency in Westchester County supporting children, teens, and adults with developmental disabilities, including individuals on the autism spectrum and their families. They offer a wide range of youth and adult programs to individuals depending on need and personal preference. One such program is known as the Choices Program. The Choices Program is a dynamic and educational community-based day program for young adults, considered as a without walls or WOW program. Learning takes place in the community. Small groups spend much of their week exploring interests and experiencing community activities. The library hoped to become a permanent part of the Choices Program for the developmentally disabled adults through the Peggy Barber Grant. Leanne Caldwell, treatment coordinator from the Westchester ARC Manzi Center, worked closely with me to set up the informal readings at the library. The original program, then called the Read Aloud program, was held informally in our conference room. Usually 5 or so participants arrived with caregivers to converse and read excerpts from the storybooks. As the leader, I also shared my own stories and read headlines from newspapers such as the Westchester Examiner. For example, a farmer's market event would start a conversation on eating and buying produce. Our second partner, a Lifeline Theater, was asked to step in after the pandemic when our library was reviving in-house programs. Next slide, please. Lifeline Theater and Art is a 501c3 nonprofit organization created to provide an outlet for unlocking the potential of children and adults with special needs through integrated theater and arts programs. They create a safe, nurturing environment where each person is free to interact and learn what they like or don't like. Their choices are valued and respected. Lifeline Theater was established by Billy Ayers and Laura Ayers in 2014 to raise awareness and to expand the reach to programs they have developed for over 20 years. Their vision is a world where people with special needs reach their rightful place in society. Next slide, please. It was a natural progression in reaching out to Manzi Center, which had been put on hold during the pandemic, to revive the informal Read Aloud program. The Peggy Barber Grant provided the funding we needed to formalize our Read Aloud program into Open Horizons. We had no formal programming budget and no active friends group, so the grant was the perfect opportunity to bring Manzi Center and Lifeline Theater, known for their music expertise, together. Since we had two working partners that worked well together, there was no need for outside programming or marketing. We set up a few meetings and follow-up phone calls to schedule the separate music and readings. A calendar with the bi-monthly sessions was organized. As the point person, I made sure everything ran smoothly. Billy Ayers from Lifeline agreed to provide 6 sessions. Manzi provided the transportation, and the library provided the space to make it all happen. Next slide, please. The Manzi group came on Fridays before Billy Ayers started his regular music sessions with the other outside Westchester organizations. Billy was paid from the grant for all 6 sessions. Musical instruments were purchased through the grant funds. Aside from the kazoo, the instruments such as the tambourine, shakers, and sticks were a great hit. The 11 Manzi attendees were thrilled with the sounds from their participation during Billy's sessions. Billy added his own expertise in drawing out the talents of the Manzi participants. One or two of the participants actually sang using a microphone, while others tried their best using their drum set. As we had surmised through our research, music therapy made a difference in the attitude and the enjoyment of the Manzi group. Their enjoyment and participation was affirmation that the music component enhanced the Open Horizons program. Aside from the music therapy sessions, the Manzi attendees also participated in the monthly educational reading program based on monthly themes, such as the change of seasons, climate change, the Olympic Games, Valentine's Day. These readings were accompanied by simple crafts, which related to the theme. As a sample of the craft was displayed, and with the help of the participants, the group worked on the craft to the best of their ability. As you can see from the slide, some of the craft projects we worked on. There's an apple tree that was glued onto a paper plate, and pine cones that were painted in different colors by watercolor. A CD player was purchased with exercise CDs, as well as CDs with popular sing-along tunes. During 1 or 2 sessions, we engaged in seated exercises. That was a big hit. Also purchased through grant funds were simple games, such as a Velcro dartboard and Jenga, both of which provided a diversion as needed. When the group was not on task or on target, the games were a good side thing. The group responded well to the gaming and music sing-alongs. We introduced musical instruments during some of the regular read sessions to reinforce the work done by Billy Ayers during the music therapy. Next slide, please. This slide shows some of the books chosen for their bright pictures and simple lines to introduce the Manzi group to the themes we worked on. Personal experiences of the participants were discussed to make the readings more personal and meaningful. Next slide, please. This slide shows some of the goals we attained during the Peggy Barber program year. Our library became a permanent part of the Choices program, as we had hoped, at Westchester ARC. We are currently a monthly stop for the Manzi group. We also reached an underserved population of our village, and that group is now being served by our library. The Manzi participants experience what our library has to offer. And we know this by the fact that Manzi participants visit the library on their own and take out CDs for their home enjoyment. The Manzi group was also introduced to the benefits of music therapy. And as a result, were able to express themselves socially through music. Our goal, alas, to increase book and music CD circulation was not achieved on paper due to staffing issues. It was difficult to assess how many items were borrowed by this group without having a formal stats sheet. Next slide, please. Some of the lessons that we learned during our programming year. It is important to recognize your patrons' individualism. Developmentally challenged have different abilities, and our awareness of these abilities is vital for a good experience and an engaging, well thought out, successful program. It is important to be flexible and understanding with the participants because it does build confidence in themselves over time. One way, of course, is to get to know your audience. You get to recognize their moods. You recognize if they have any kind of specific food allergies. One of the things that we originally had hoped to purchase through the grant funds were snacks, but that was discouraged by the Manzi coordinator since she mentioned that allergies might have a detrimental effect. Please be aware of, as I mentioned, moods, because they may affect the outcome of your lesson. Certain people might become uneasy or anxious, and it's time to pivot and do a different, engage them in a different way with a different activity. As I mentioned, the gaming activities. Take into consideration individual capabilities. Not all of the Manzi group attendants were able to glue or cut certain project papers. So they needed a number of times help from us, from the librarians that helped run the program itself, the sessions. Repetition is an important component as well because it helps to focus the group and get a plan across. I'd like to also mention that there are certain tips in terms of applying for a grant. You should always keep in touch with your community partners, network, and be informed of changes in your community. Keep a file on grants that are in line with your library's wish list and needs. ALA is a great grant resource. Be flexible with changes, whether it be with your staff or with the community partners. It happened that over the 2023 programming year, we had 3 staff changes. It is important to note that winning the Peggy Barber grant was a team effort. And it was a pretty straightforward and easy to follow application. We were able to communicate with ALA personnel and ask questions and make any budget amendments. We started off with one librarian who did the actual application, then another librarian who took over some of the sessions, and finally, a third librarian who currently still works with us, who helped put together the PowerPoint. Next slide, please. I leave you with some of the resources that show the links for the 2 partners we were in touch with. And also to mention the fact that ALA has a wonderful book that they published called Library Programming for Adults with Developmental Disabilities. This book provides some great program ideas and resources. Next slide, please. I thank you so much for your attention, and I hope you have a wonderful day.
Hello, and thank you for allowing us to speak to you this afternoon on behalf of myself, Jasmine, and our Assistant Director, Susan, from the Gill Memorial Library in Paulsboro, New Jersey. Next slide, please. So who and where are we? So Paulsboro is a very small town, right on the edge of New Jersey, across from Philadelphia and the Philadelphia Airport. It was originally home to the Lenape Indians, and they originally called the area Crown Point. The area has changed through hands a lot through different settlers of the time, and eventually in 1776, 96 acres of what the area came to be known as Billingsport was sold off for 600 pounds of Pennsylvania currency. This land was charged to Congress, and it was the first piece of land bought by our federal government. In 1904, the official beginning date for when Paulsboro and Billingsport were incorporated, and the population currently in 2020 was 5,880, and in 2023 it was reported as 6,267. However, that's still very small compared to what we originally had in 1950 of 7,840. So everyone knows everyone and tries to help where they can. And we're home to some National Historic Sites, such as Fort Billings at Billingsport. In 1777, the fort was erected by troops from Virginia, Pennsylvania, South Carolina, and New Jersey, part of a defense system established for the lower Delaware River to prevent the entrance of the British to Philadelphia. However, Lord Howe did sail up the Delaware, but he was stopped by the naval stockade at Billingsport. Unfortunately, though, the soldiers were outnumbered, and they later burned down their barracks and went upriver. We have the Tinicum Lighthouse, which around 1800, the government decided that Billingsport was an excellent location for a lighthouse, and it was built on an elevated point a short distance from the old fort. Also known for Paulsboro is former Lincoln Park. It was an amusement park that was built in 1890, and it had concerts and fireworks every 2 weeks. This was important for the area because cars at the time were not available. They weren't invented yet, and it was the only entertainment around. So people could take the train in from around southern New Jersey and Philadelphia to come and spend time with their families. So it was famous for its carousel and water slides. that actually went down into the river. This closed down though in 1904 due to loss of popularity with the introduction of automobiles. In 1843, Billingsport was well known as a shad fishing village. This industry thrived until manufacturing companies settled on the waterfront and allowed their waste to pollute the river. The poverty rate has fluctuated, but in recent years, in 2020, it was 9.32%, and it's risen actually in 2023 to 12.7%. A lot of shops have been closing up due to thefts and disinterest in development, but we've actually seen a change in recent years with residential development. The main industry in town, though, is industrial and mobile oil. Is a research plant and a refinery on the border of our town and our neighboring town, Gibbstown. Unfortunately, though, because it is right on the border, we don't see any of their taxes. So that kind of limits what we can get from both the town and for other funding. And this was due to William Penn, who was the one who originally set the town borders. And he stated that this land, being Paulsboro and Billingsport, would never become a great industrial center because it was an island with a swamp on one side and a creek on the other. Gill Memorial, though, is a single branch public library. Originally started in 1900, it were technically older than the origination date of the town. Transferred to our current building in 1951, it was deeded to the town by Mary England Fish as a memorial to her relatives in 1949, but the building had to be updated for public use. The building has 200 years of history, and one of the very first buildings in Paulsboro. It was built in 1806, and has been a family residence, general store, doctor's office, and an antique shop before becoming a library. An addition was completed in 2015, made possible through years of saving and a grant from the U.S. Department of Agriculture. It's also host to the Henry C. Lownslager Monument and a museum. The library started in 1963 with memorabilia all related to local history and people of Paulsboro. A part of the county system, we share materials, but not funding. This also hinders us in ways for programming. 2023 was actually the first year in 6 years that we had a 20-hour and more week director with a full schedule of programs. This unfortunately put us at a deficit, and if we didn't get grants, then we would be at a huge disadvantage. Next slide, please. So today I'd like to go over the impact of how the grant affected our library, the goals of the program, including we hope to have the students locate information in the library, either on their own or with help, how to identify the library as a community resource. What we did in terms of introduction to library procedures, lessons ranging from STEAM to cultural information, crafts designed to incorporate both motor and critical thinking skills in a fun environment. How it was received, both with enthusiasm from the teachers and students, new memberships, one class committed to another year of the program, and a return of students after the program ended. And our partnerships, which were with the teachers of the Paulsboro Junior Senior High School and the Rowan College of South Jersey, and also volunteers. Next slide, please. The impact of the Peggy Barber Tribute Grant has enabled us to not only be able to order in new material, but to also help an underserved area of our community. We survived from fundraising and grants, and this provided supplies, new books, and augmented staff salary for the 1 to 2 hour sessions that were held outside of our normal operating hours. Next slide, please. So who are the life skills students? There are 2 classes consisting of 8 to 10 students in 9th through 12th grade with varying disabilities. Their teachers wanted to take the class on trips to community locations that would occur alongside classroom instruction, to both serve as a place to practice their skills they learn in a community setting and to also get experience within their community to help them after they graduate. Next slide, please. So the students to participate, so for the goals, that they wanted the students to participate in one of their community environments, understand how the library works within their community, incorporate more active library members, learn open a more productive dialogue between the school and the library. Have the students identifying that the library is a community resource for their current and their future selves. So even after they graduate, they know they could still come here for information. Have the students be able to locate information to help them in their recreational, educational, and vocational studies. And have the students be able to seek assistance from a responsible person to assist them, either library staff, a teacher, or teacher's aide. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Oh, thank you. So the program itself, we hosted 18 educational field trips with the life skills class from Paulsboro Junior Senior High School, along with their teachers and teachers aide. 12th, 9th grade, and 7th, 8th grade, and their teachers participated in 2-hour sessions at the library each month throughout the school year. Each session was designed to challenge the students to work collaboratively with each other and staff members to find resources and increase their individual autonomy, to find answers to their questions independently outside of the classroom, while also including STEAM, science, technology, education, art and math, and cultural elements in a fun environment. Next slide, please. I'd like to now turn the floor over to Susan, our Assistant Director, who can provide more information on the individual sessions of the program.
Hi, how are you? The library staff presented different topics for each month based on the students' interests, pop culture, celebrations, and science, and other cultural aspects. The curriculum consisted of research topics and activities, including crafts, drawing, painting, writing skills, spoken words, etc. Presentations by the students were on the library stage and encouraged public speaking skills. Students were a little shy at first, but they definitely enjoyed it. We displayed for Black History, next slide, please. For Black History Month, we displayed a who's who matchup game on the conference windows. This included a brief biography with a photograph, and the students were encouraged to discover who each icon and legend was. We presented a Harlem Renaissance poetry with writers including modern-day activists such as Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Madam C.J. Walker. The students were also encouraged to write haiku poems and then share their poetry and thoughts with the rest of the group. They really supported each other with this activity and enjoyed it. The students created snowflake crafts and were presented with scientific materials that discuss the natural phenomenon of snowflakes. Next slide. Okay, so we did some archive history and Indigenous peoples exercises. The students were encouraged to make dream catchers, which they did. I'm lost here, I'm very sorry. We worked with a Man on the Street News Style project last fall. The students were given newspapers and copies of Weird New Jersey magazine to scour through for a story that they would like to report on. Using a paper and tape microphone, simple illustrations, and a little bravado, the students delivered a story on something they read about in the materials provided. One reported seeing a strange light in the sky, another reported on an unusual robbery, and I remember that robbery took place in the 1800s, so it was a lot of fun, and one had a sighting of the Jersey Devil. As an Indigenous Peoples Month exercise, the students constructed dream catchers made from a mix of found objects and craft items that we had around here. We were able to use some of the grant money to purchase frames for the dream catchers and the string, twine, and ribbon needed for those. As evident in the photo, the level of care and skill that the students put into their projects was inspirational and beautiful. They were really, really proud of their finished products. Next page. We had a graphic novel winter celebrations session with projects involved charting their own graphic novels in strip form. The strip was to include winter holidays and celebrations. The students worked in pairs to depict each custom or celebration with speech bubbles, illustrations, and a description. They excelled in this exercise and they had a lot of fun doing it. One student chose to honor their favorite teacher who had passed away in the month before. The tribute was very well executed and it was really touching. And they brought that back to the school to share with the other teachers. They really enjoyed it. We had the students create snow globes from recycled yogurt jars and other art supplies. And in the photos, you can see a couple of the snow globes. They were all varying. They all, they had a good time. Some painted the lids, some did all their work on the inside, some did the lids on the bottom. And they had a really nice time with that one too. We had a Mardi Gras celebration. Next slide, where the children listened to New Orleans jazz. They snacked on King's cakes and we discussed king cakes, carnival. Jasmine brought in some authentic carnival masks and hats. We did like a photo session with the students. I'm sorry we don't have those photos now. And they had a nice time with that. And during this session, as with all the other sessions we had with the students, they were encouraged to go through their reading materials that we specifically pulled out for the event so as to not overwhelm them and to make sure that we kept within their reading levels. The students also participated in our first ever flower show. They completed their projects and they were really beautiful. The individual personalities of the students really shone through. Some entries included poetry and textile submissions. We still have some of their work on display. Next slide. We also did spring planning where we discussed plants, the different parts of the plants. We pulled out books that would also acclimate that lesson. The session included outdoor time where the students planted flats of petunias in our beds, and they were able to admire their handiwork throughout the year and their gardening skills. In most of the petunias they planted, they lasted up until the frost, so that was a lovely addition. And lastly, the students participated in making homemade bubbles with alternative wands and craft supplies. The most successful bubble wand they found was a pipe cleaner loop. And after the students participated, they had an ice cream social as a closing activity for all their hard work and the fun that they had during the year. Next slide, please. The students were always excited to attend each lesson and session. The teachers reported that it was a successful program with positive feedback, and Mrs. Haas asked to return the following year. And the students, they really encouraged each other and supported each other throughout everything. And we noticed that each of the students were each other's biggest cheerleaders, not to mention the wonderful teacher they had and the classroom aides that came in and assisted with that. We couldn't have done it without the Peggy Barber Grant. And on a final note, I would love for everyone part of this program to visit our library, as we would love to visit and meet with you at your home libraries. Thank you very much.
Thank you all so much for all that wealth of information and really great content. We really appreciate it. We do have some time for questions, and so we will jump right into those and we'll get to as many as we can before our time is up together. So this first question is for all of you, and perhaps Martha, you can start us off answering first, and then I can toss it over to Jasmine and Susan to answer next. And the question is, were you able to continue this wonderful programming after, now that the grant money is gone?
Well, as I mentioned, yes, the Manzi Group does participate in a lot of services that we offer here at the library. They are here on a monthly basis still. They no longer can participate in the Billy Ayres program, but we do continue having the educational read-along program as well as crafts. As I mentioned also, they do borrow our items, such as CDs, and I do see them individually. And we did become part of the Choices program, which is Westchester ARC's specific program for developmentally disabled adults.
Great, thank you, Martha. And Jasmine and Susan, were you all able to continue your programming as well?
No, we were not.
We still do see some of the students come back in though, and they do continue to check out library materials.
Yeah, we've retained the students as patrons, but we do not really quite have the funding to open up those hours and have it staffed. So it was extremely helpful, but we are not able to do that now.
Understand. Thanks for sharing. And a follow-up question for Susan and Jasmine. How were you able to get the middle and high school students to attend your programs. Did you have those programs during school, or was it an after-school program when you were hosting those?
It was during their school time, and the teachers would bring them over, and the teachers are the ones that facilitated the transportation.
One class took a bus and one class walked.
Awesome. Great. It's great to see students in the library. I'm sure you all agree. It's also very super helpful to have the assistance of your teachers too, to local teachers to
They were
help
really great.
facilitate that. It's awesome. Um, this next question is for Martha. Can you explain how the read aloud program worked and with the books that you showed earlier? Was that led by a reader, or were the participants reading on their own individually, or how did that work?
No, the actual reading took place with the leader of the session, most times myself or the other librarian who has now currently left us for a different position. So we did the readings, but it's not just like a dry reading from the book. It tries to engage the participants in conversation. So when you're talking about, for example, MLK Day, you also mentioned the fact of events that are occurring in the town, or you might also mention something about resolutions for the new year and how that might fit into the idea of we have a dream and we're talking about peace and that kind of thing. Yes, the readings, even before it was called Open Horizons as the Read Aloud program, it definitely opened up the participants to different themes that they didn't quite understand before, like the solar system we mentioned. We talked about the stars. We talked about changes of season. It is an indoor program, so we weren't able to bring them outside to a garden, for example. But when we did the Olympics, I actually used the community room and set out all sorts of items like barbells, and we did a Lindy with a rope. We did a long jump. So they were physically active.
Sounds like a lot of fun.
It was.
Thanks for sharing, Martha. And this next question is for both groups as well, but we can start with Susan and Jasmine. Were your programs open to the wider public, or was it just the specific student groups that you worked with?
Student groups.
Got it. And Martha, was yours as well? Was it just the individuals from the Manzi Center, or was it open to the wider public?
It basically followed a certain procedure. So it was open to the Manzi Center because they were our partner, and I worked with Leanne very closely. I know that Billy Ayer's program, which is the Lifeline Theater, does have a larger opening for Westchester County, and other people are available, other groups. But for the time when we had the 6 sessions, it was the Manzi participants that came earlier in the morning in order to enjoy one-on-one time with him.
Great, thank you. And this next question is also for both groups, and I'll start with Susan and Jasmine again. Which session was your favorite? You described so many wonderful programs that you hosted. Did you have one in particular that was your favorite one?
My top 2 favorites were the Mardi Gras, with them trying on all the different hats and things, and just seeing how much fun they had with that, and then also with the bubbles, because they hadn't realized that they could make a bubble wand out of just regular household objects. And with being a poor community like we are, it's always good to give them options for them to have fun during the summertime and not to feel like they can't do something because they don't have a specific item for that.
I would say my favorite was also the Mardi Gras because the kids had a really nice time with it. It involved everything from food, culture, music, arts. They had a really nice time with it. And I also really liked the Dreamcatcher session and project because we were able to discuss Indigenous peoples, the reason for the dream catchers, and really the finished product that the kids made, it exceeded my expectations. They were all as unique as the kids, and they were really beautiful. And it's something anyone could do easily if you think about it. And it was like, I also like projects like that encourage them to think out of the box, which they did. They did a great job, and some of their, I mean, it was really different. Some of the varying projects that they were able to finish, they were all beautiful. So they were two of my favorites.
Great, thank you. And Martha, did you have a favorite session from your programming?
I would probably say that my favorite sessions would have been the music therapy. Because of the fact that that was the added component that we were able to provide because of the grant. I mean, I had a read aloud program, but it was the extra money that was able to go towards the musical instruments and the therapeutic feeling that they received in terms of how to handle themselves socially in a larger group and to be able to perform. Billy Ayers is wonderful in that he's able to encourage that kind of engagement. And actually, I wish I had pictures for you. Those were done by another librarian, and she no longer works with us. But yes, they actually picked up microphones and they sang into them, and everybody that participated in Manzi knew the songs. They were popular, regular tunes, and they all stamped their feet and they were going along with it. So it was a joy to see.
Thank you all. I love hearing you I love all of you hearing or describing the programs and hearing how much the participants really enjoyed it. It's evident in the way that you describe the programs and your reflections on it that it was a very special time for them and for your library as well. So thank you for sharing that. A question for Martha again. How were you able to balance the interests and abilities of all the different Manzi Center individuals so that the read alouds and activities worked for everyone?
Well, as I did hopefully in part, is the fact that sometimes the participants weren't all that happy about the uh, theme that we were providing, but when you pivot and you use other activities, you do get engage the entire group to a certain degree. There might always be, as I mentioned, moods in the group, and you might have to have a caretaker, which the Manzi group did come with their own caretaker from the Westchester Arc. It was one or two caregivers. Those caregivers knew the group, so they were able to move somebody aside, for example, and discuss with them how the behavior might be affecting the actual lesson. So we were fortunate with that. But otherwise, yes, you just keep repetition, acknowledge they have abilities, and you follow along. And sometimes it's just a matter of diversion in terms of a activity such as the toss the ball on the wall.
Thank you. Yeah, it sounds like flexibility and
Was
adaptability are
very important.
very important. Yeah, for sure. Another question too, and I'll start with Susan and Jasmine. Were you able to hear from any of the participants what they thought about the programs? Or were you able to hear from the teachers of the group what they thought as well?
Yes, so the teachers let us know that all the students really did enjoy their time in the library. And the one teacher, Miss Haas, she did request to come back the following year.
One of the students I regularly see when I'm shopping at Walmart, and they were really excited. And when they saw me, they were like, Miss Susan, we had fun. Are we coming back next month? And when they came into the library subsequently after the sessions, they were still excited about what we would do next. Yeah.
That's awesome. And Martha, were you able to hear from any of the participants what they thought about the program, or did you mostly work with the leadership facilitators at the Manzi Center.
Yeah, I mean, it is definitely the leadership from Manzi Center that keeps reiterating how happy they are that we are continuing this program, how and how the participants are looking forward to coming on a monthly basis. For example, this coming up session in February, we're going to have another organization join us called Concerts in Motion, where they're going to bring a musician and hopefully do some karaoke, some interactive songs. I guess I would say that because of the fact that the participants know who I am, and when they walk to the library, they have a feeling of, like they're coming to something that they are going to look forward to. And you can tell that it's definitely an enjoyment for them. It's not like they're forced into coming here.
Great. Thank you. And I have one final question for both of you, and I can start with Martha this time.
Okay.
Do you have any advice on how to make a strong application for anyone who might want to apply for the Peggy Barber Tribute Grant next year?
Okay, as I mentioned, you keep everything in a file. You keep yourself organized. You have a calendar. You keep a schedule. You ask help if you need it from colleagues. Uh, as I also mentioned, it's not a very difficult grant to get through. Um, Basically, you definitely have to give some background and as to why you are approaching this grant and for what reason, and how you will use your partners and how you will gain, a different experience from a program perhaps that you already have established or a need that you will fill at the library. As I also said, that a number of times we had to adjust our budget and we had to call and email. I believe we spoke with Megan quite a number of times about, for example, how we couldn't use the snacks, and so therefore we adjusted and amendments were made, and you guys were very open to that.
Great. Thank you, Martha.
Mhm.
Susan and Jasmine, any tips from your end on how to make a strong application?
I'm actually learning, so I really appreciated Martha's information and her tips because we did not apply for this. We're sort of in the middle. There was a
Yeah.
different director even besides Antoinette. So we did none of this. We did the sessions, we did the classes, we came up with the programming and the topics, but we ourselves did not apply. We were in the position at the time. Now we're on our second director since then. We just kind of picked up the ball and ran with it, and we did a good job, but
Yes, you did.
we don't know. But I really thank Martha for her advice.
Yeah. And then just keeping open contact with the
Yeah.
teachers and the community members. They
And
really helped a lot.
Yeah, and making sure we're on the right page and running it by each other, and mostly just judging by like the reactions of the students, what they like, what they don't like, so
Yeah, because the kids will tell you.
they will.
Thank-
Either verbally or through body language, we'll know they're not having a good time.
True that.
Thank you all. Yes. And Alicia as well just put in the chat. I will just read it as well to make sure everyone saw it. Alicia said, as a former chair, when applying for the grant, I would recommend carefully reading the criteria for the grant and being as detailed as possible, especially when it asks about how your library is funded and the goals of the program. So some great advice there. We actually just closed the Peggy Barber Tribute Grant for this cycle. The next cycle will open up in December of this year. We'll have a new theme for the grant this year. So we encourage you to sign up for our Programming Librarian e-newsletter if you have not already. That is how you can be notified of any grants that are opening up through the Public Programs Office. And like Martha said as well, our staff is here to help you every step of the way. So we always love to hear from you, hear your program ideas, and really help you all craft a proposal that is strong and that can win the award. So we love to see it. We love to hear from past awardees like this as well. So thank you all so much. And we will wrap things up. I want to give a huge thank you to all of our presenters today for this wealth of wonderful information, as well as to my colleague behind the scenes, M. Gallagher, for their support on this webinar. The archived version of this session will be available to view online by next week, and it will be on the same registration page where you found the link to register through Zoom. And a huge thank you to everyone for joining us today, and have a great rest of your week.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Yep.
Thank you. You all are getting a lot of praise and thank you in the chat as well, and some heart emojis coming up. So hope you see that.
Can I ask one more question?
Yeah.
To where the newsletter is, would that be, could I find that from any of the links that you sent?
Yeah, I'll put it in the chat right now, actually,
Okay,
if I
great.
can
Thank
pull it
you.
up real quick.
We really did have a lot of fun with the entire, the grant program.
Great. Love to hear that. And let me pull up the chat. All right, I just put it in the chat too for anyone that's still on and would like to subscribe to our newsletter too. And I can email it to you as well, Susan
Thank you.
and Jasmine.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much. Have a great rest of your day.
Yes, you too. Bye.
Thanks.
Bye.